And we're going to continue with the first chapter of The Key to the Indian, which is called Anyone for Camping, which is how this story began. It is only 2 days after the end of the last book, where Omri's dad discovered that Omri's cupboard was magic and found the little people. So his dad has suggested a camping trip. We don't know why yet. And we're going back to that same day that Omri and his dad found out they were going to share this secret. And Omri and his dad are walking along a cliffside talking about the Indian. "This is dangerous," he said with an air of discovery. "Yes, it is. It can be." "I just thought it was just the most wonderful fun," said his father. "That's exactly what I thought at first. It's not fun, not always. I mean, it's real people." "Yes, of course. I realized that when I saw them. It's natural, Dad. You have to kind of get into it, but things really happen. You do have to think ahead. You can't just do things on impulse." "Right." "Yes, I see that. Anything could happen. Obviously, you mustn't change anything back there." "No," said Omri with great feeling. He didn't want to even think about the time he had feared he'd changed something so drastically that he himself might never have been born. They walked on slowly. Then his father said, "But your wooden chest was destroyed in that freak storm, so what could we use?" Omri thought of telling his dad that the storm, too, had happened because of the key, but he had a strange feeling of wanting to protect him from too much knowledge. He might scare him, and then he would back off. Not that his dad was a coward, but you wouldn't have to be one to be scared of magic that could bring a cyclone all the way from the Texas of 100 years ago to rampage over southern England, destroying everything in its path. So he just said, "Well, it has to be big enough to hold us both, and it has to have a keyhole for the key. But if we were both in it together, who'd turn the key? Yes, that's the problem we had before. Patrick and I could never go back at the same time." They had tramped for a while in silence, and at last his dad said, "This is very difficult to get your mind around." Omri knew it, but Little Bear's urgent looks and words pressed on his brain. His dad was frowning. "We need to do some research. Read up on the history. Find out what was happening back then." "What is happening? What is happening?" He furrowed his brows. He looked remarkably like Omri when he did that. "Seems as if this is all happening at once. History, time, in layers, kind of. When we go back, if we find a way to, we'll just drop through a number of layers and be back at Little Bear's time." Omri thought it was a good way of putting it. "But how can we be sure of getting to the right layer?" "That's easy. We'll have to either go back with Little Bear, or with something of his. Something that belongs to the right time and place. The magic latches onto that. Like a kind of trinket to the right destination." They had walked on, frowning, thinking. Little Bear was no longer with them. He, Bright Stars, and their baby son, as well as Matron and Fickets, had all been sent back to the cupboard as soon as they had had a talk, right after meeting Omri's father. They'd all been anxious to return to their own time, especially Matron, a superior sort of nurse, who had been in the middle of her rounds at St. Thomas's Hospital in the London of 1941. The bombing of the city in World War II had begun, and she was frantically busy. Sergeant Fickets had been preparing for a drilling session with his trainees in his time, which was back in the 1950s. As for the Indians, after a short tense speech by Little Bear, during which Bright Stars allowed Omri to hold the baby, Tall Bear, in the palm of his hand, a sensation so entrancing that Omri had frankly not listened very carefully, they had asked to be sent back too, but with the proviso that Omri and his father should make every effort to follow them soon. "I need counsel," Little Bear said forcefully. "English, charge toward Iroquois friends. Many years Iroquois fight at sight of English against French. Many warriors die. Now they turn from us. Our people do not understand. Need chief to tell what best to do." He shook his head, scowling. "I need English man, wise man, explain what it is in English heads," he said, staring at Omri's father challengingly. Next day, on the cliff top, Omri's father said, "I know something about what the Europeans did to the Indians. It's not a pretty story. I don't know what we can do to help. But if our wretched ancestors are up to some tricks, which they probably are, we are, which they probably are, the least we can do is find a way to get in there and give the Indians a hand. And now here they were at the supper table, and Omri's dad was gassing on about going camping. What was he up to? Everyone was talking. Their mother was on her feet again, collecting plates with a great clatter, saying that if there really was a camping holiday in prospect, they'd better do some serious planning, not go at half-cocked like last time. Guion was already leafing through the yellow pages looking for suppliers of camping equipment, and Adiel was asking if they could go as far as Dartmoor, where they could really feel that they were away, from civilization. Their dad was giving every impression of being absolutely serious about the whole project. Only Omri hadn't joined in. "When can we do it?" said Adiel, who seemed quite fired up now. "Oh, I thought on the half-term holiday," said their father. "Great, let's go for it." There's a firm here says they do luxury tents," said Guion. "No point spending money on some ratty old tent that'll drop to pieces or let the rain in." "No point spending money on some palatial tent that you'll only use once, if that," said their mother. I'll believe all you laid back city types going camping when I actually see it." "Well, you won't see it, Mum," said Adiel reasonably. "You're not coming with us. Or you're not coming, are you?" Their mother stopped in the doorway with a pile of dirty plates, and there was a moment's silence. Then she turned and regarded them with narrowed eyes. "Well now, maybe you'd better not count on that. I happen to be the only one in this entire family who actually had some camping experience. Oh, yes," she added as they all gawked at her. "I was quite the little happy camper when I was in the Girl Guides." "Mum, you weren't a Girl Guide. You couldn't have been." They all, even Omri, yelled. She drew herself up. "And why not? As a matter of fact, I was a platoon leader. I had more badges than anyone else." "How many?" 11.5, so there." She turned and walked out, head in the air. "What was the half badge for?" their dad called after her. "Making a fire without matches," she called back. "Only it went out." They were all silent for a moment. Then Guion went back to the yellow pages. "5-man tents, he muttered. "5-person, don't you mean?" said their father. He winked at Omri. It was one of his slow winks, a wink that said, "You and I know what this is all about," but Omri didn't. All he knew was that he couldn't wait to get his dad alone and find out. And that's the end of Chapter 1.